more important even than the psychedelic experience. Individually, we have to reclaim the primacy of direct experience. As people, the real universe is within your reach, always.
What's going on, my friends? It's Eric Osborne back here on Not Your Guru. If you've never listened before, well, you're coming into the you're coming in at the opposite end. You can work your way backwards if you like, because, friends, this is the last episode of Not Your Guru, at least for the time being. It's not because I've decided that I am your guru, don't worry. Quite the contrary, honestly. There's a lot that I really want to share, because I have had, I don't know, probably, this show averages about 1,000 downloads a month. Not huge, obviously, but I really, truly appreciate and care about every listen. Every person who spends their attention with me it's really a privilege. So I want to just start by saying that. I thank you so much for your support, to whatever extent that it has been. And if you're brand new to my work, there's a whole library of really good content, I think, to explore. The production quality can use some assistance. And that's one of the reasons that I'm making the shift. What I really would like to be real with you all about right now is how challenging this has been here lately. It's like God has been really putting me to the test in terms of having a public presence. It's not something that I have ever been really enthusiastic about. When I had my mushroom farm, I did everything I could to keep my face out of it and just let the mushrooms speak for themselves. Making retreats, that was about the work. And then people would, reach out to me and want interviews and stuff. And so, I did it gratefully. I do love sharing the information around psilocybin and sacred use. It's so powerful. I've seen thousands. Literally, I have worked with maybe not 2,000 people at this point myself personally, but probably about 1,500 that I have personally worked with. Many of those people, the vast majority, have given them at least 3 doses of mushrooms. So I have sat with so many amazing people. Many of you listen to this show, and thank you. And it is incredible, the transformations that I have seen. And it has been very taxing to be in the public eye. I'm not going to stop that. I can't really stop that. I don't really want to. I do acknowledge that I am a highly experienced, very caring, not guru. And I love having really powerful, deep conversations with folks about their own transformation. So it's interesting that this last episode just synchronistically ends up being the one at the end of the personal development chapter. In large part, it's my overambitious attempt to create topical chapters that has impeded the growth or the productivity of this show. It's been really, it was a lot more than I imagined, trying to coordinate that when I have so many other projects. Sanctuary is thriving. We're new websites up, should be by now. We've got some amazing programs happening. The Sacred Passage that's helping people with end of life access to psilocybin, our minister trainings that are really opening up incredible access around the country. building community of peer support there is just, it's beautiful. If you've listened for a while, you may have heard the episode with Omar Thomas, one of my old Jamaican retreat buddies. He helped me get that thing going in a lot of ways. And he and I were talking today, actually how beautiful it is that I am now like really offering access to sacred mushrooms in the way that I've always envisioned, but could never really figure out, particularly working in Jamaica. And now he's in Jamaica doing the for-profit model, charging $3,000, which is that's in a very, very reasonable rate. But it's just interesting how the tables turn. And I'm so grateful for that. I am, honest to God, I'm so grateful for the way my life is going. I have never been happier. Never. My beautiful, amazing wife, Courtney, who has been a big part of my public presence anyway, since coming back to the States. And she'll probably be an even bigger part. I'll probably be more a part of her public presence if I get what I'm hoping for here. So she and I have a couple of projects that we're going to be working on that you'll be hearing more about. It will still be on this channel because you guys are awesome. I mean, my subscribers, I appreciate you so much. And the content that we're going to create it's not going to be too far out of line from what we've been talking about here. It's going to be centered around relationships and helping people navigate challenging conversations in their relationships. If you've listened to us at all, then you know that's been a huge part of our journey. And it is absolutely, fundamentally, the teaching, the care, the communication that she has shown me and shared with me and allowed me to become a better version of myself it feels like one of the most important things that we can bring into the world, especially now that Sanctuary is getting more to be a self-sustaining system. Still so happy to be a part of that, and look to expand the seminary work at Sanctuary, a lot more training. I have this beautiful vision of kind of a Hogwarts of psilocybin, maybe eventually multiple psychoactives one day. But that's down the road. So we're working on some stuff that's going to be a little better put together, a little better produced. It's going to be more geared towards meaningful offerings that our listeners can incorporate into their lives. Excuse me. And it's gonna like add fun to relationships. I'm on marriage number 3, 12 years deep though, so in a pretty good space, and we are happier than we have ever been, and it is entirely because of our continually improved communication. Maybe you've experienced in your life people that you have loved dearly who maybe there was a misunderstanding or some conflict, and rather than work it out, they just split. Or everybody does. People just go their different ways. I mean, sometimes that's perfectly acceptable. I tend to believe that it's more often a shortcut. It's the ego trying to get away from the perceived threat that comes with real deep introspection. But it's something that I have gotten pretty good at. I have faced some really challenging aspects of myself. Y'all have heard me talk about my borderline characteristics. All 9, baby. All 9. I'm full blown. But it is because of this very loving relationship where I'm able to work through my processes, be exposed to some of the I don't want to say problematic behavior, but ways that I see the world, negativity bias, and black and white thinking, the suicidality, all the characteristics of borderline have brought a lot of challenge to my life. And honestly, it's been challenging for relationships and friends of mine, and I accept that. I understand that. I can appreciate that. And I also know that neurodivergencies, shall we call them, are truly can be opportunities to really experience one's personal genius. I believe that. I know that. I experience it. If it weren't for my NDs, then there's just no way I would have created and done the things that I've done. Granted, a lot of it has been in seeking approval from the outside. And I am learning slowly but surely that really only my approval matters. And that's kind of where I've come to. In the past, I would have just pushed through and pushed on in this show. I wore this shirt on purpose, never stop, even though it's a little sloppy. Because in a lot of ways, that's what I have done in the past that has been detrimental. I still believe don't ever stop, but sometimes we've got to shift directions. And so that's what we're doing. We're regrouping and we are shifting focus because we really want to bring value into the world. And again, what we have gone through and experienced in our personal romantic relationship it's transformed me far more than my work with psychedelics. Psychedelics have helped me step into that challenging work, diminishing my ego and really acknowledging the areas that I have for growth. And I can say confidently that it's now one of my better characteristics is I can take it. I can take it to the face. What is difficult to take, though, and so I've just kind of been like regrouping and preparing myself for it, is the attack, or are the attacks that come from the general public, people that don't know me, in particular, which is ironic, right? It's like you'd think that the people that know you, if they have a problem, those would be the ones that are more challenging. But I am able to see in those intimate relationships where someone else's shadow is preventing them from even hearing what I'm saying, for instance. And again, anybody out there, there's some people that I have really done wrong, and there's some people that have really done me wrong. And every single one of you, I am more than willing to sit down and have a conversation and try to reconcile. That's just who I am. Most people don't want to do that, and that's totally fine. We are all where we're at. It's all good. There was definitely a time when I was not able or desirous to do so. But it's been, oh boy, there was like a month there where it was just regularly, there were a handful of like people I don't know who would just private message me and tell me what a turd I was. And like, you don't even know me. Like how? And like, it seems like those people would not bother you. But for some reason, it was more painful for me. And I just have had to take a break from being out in the public for a while. We've been having amazing meetings in Sanctuary and the community there that like we know each other, we get to know each other. And so that's where I've been putting the majority of my energy. And so I just I don't feel like I need to apologize or explain, but I care about the people that engage with my content. And so I want you to know why it's been kind of up and down. And I suspect that a lot of people listen to what I present because somehow you're invested in my story. It's a pretty cool story. I mean, all the stuff that we've gone through after being arrested for mushrooms and going, smuggling mushrooms to Jamaica and starting retreats, bootstrapping retreats, and then that whole thing, which I'm not quite at liberty to discuss, and selling that company, and then come back up here and bootstrapping a church that is unlike anything else. I mean, we're donation-based ceremonies. We've got a retreat this weekend. People are paying $25 for their camp spot per night, and then if they want to donate afterwards, cool. If they don't, that's cool too, because we're just communities supporting each other and loving each other. And I really, truly believe that is the spirit of psilocybin. I've been picking so much wild psilocybin for free, just like all over the place. We're friends taking mushrooms together in a spiritual, intentional context. It doesn't have to be some big therapy session. You're going to get a lot of therapy. Actually, there's a research study that just published that shows that psychedelics in the dance hall are as effective as psychedelics in the therapy office or the ceremony at healing trauma. It has more to do with intentional application of the experiences afterwards than it has to do with the experience itself, so long as you're in a supportive and safe setting. So that's an interesting side note. So this last conversation that you're going to listen to, if you choose to, is with Courtney and I. And if you listen, you'll probably be able to pick up on my spiritual fatigue. The conversation was recorded 2 or 3 weeks before this intro has been recorded. And I am just starting to come out of the other side. There was about a month and a half there of some real pain, real internal turmoil. I've always tried to be just super authentic and super real with people. I think that this guise of everything's okay, even though it is, it's all good. It's all happening just like it's supposed to. Thank you, God. But, the creators that show these, life on filter, I don't think that's doing anybody any service. And so what I want to do with my time and energy when it comes to content creation is be authentic and vulnerable and add value. And yes, this podcast does add value, but I don't think it's been direct enough. And that's what we're really going to focus on. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I don't really have anything more to say, so I'm going to let you go and, just check out Courtney and I. She's amazing. She's amazing. And I'm starting to think that maybe I'm pretty okay too. So I hope to see you on our next iteration of creativity. After 2 divorces, watching my own parents divorce and seeing the impact that had on everybody, and seeing this kind of widespread social degradation that I feel is in large part due to the kind of, I don't want to say destruction, that's too harsh of a word, but the breakdown of family that just keeps showing up for each other in love. Friends that keep showing up for each other in love. That all it takes is listening, putting our ego just a little bit aside and listening to what the people we care about, listening to their experience and caring about it. And if we're having a negative impact on their experience, determining whether or not there are changes that we can make that fit within our own ethics that can bring some relief to the situation. We all need each other. We are all in this together. I really, truly, deeply appreciate you being in this with me. I'll see you whenever that is. It won't be too long because we're in the process of working on that material right now. I'm not going to go too far and tell you the name of what we're creating or anything like that, but it is going to be designed not to necessarily save relationships by any means. But if they're a relationship like mine that was still a very loving relationship but had some significant potential to go off the rails, then what we're offering can perhaps bring about not necessarily reconciliation, but heartfelt, spiritually grounded, compassionate understanding of each other so that we can move forward together. That's what it's all about, in my book anyway. So thanks so much, and I will see you on the other side of the mushroom. Well, it's been a while since we sat down and potted.
Getting potty.
Did the pod?
Wait. Getting potty. Not on the potty.
Potty time. I want everybody to know that my personal growth journey is not complete. I've got lots of room for improvement.
Newsflash. This guy is not done growing.
I've not reached perfection.
I would certainly say the same about myself.
You know, it was a significant realization that I had last night that I shared with you. That I cannot imagine myself being where I am now in my spiritual, mental health, personal development journey without your influence. And more than just your influence, I mean, it's the ability that you have to communicate really challenging stuff in a very considerate and peaceful way. Like, we've been through a lot together, and I just know that if it wasn't for your, not even just like encouragement, support, holding space, like you have illustrated and provided tools that have helped me communicate my needs, my wants, my where I'm at, in ways that I never had. And just like looking back on past relationships and seeing how that didn't happen, how absent it was, it's like you are the difference. So I think one of the things I'd love for us to talk about in this conversation is the role of romantic relationships in personal growth. It's like, I feel like it's overlooked. There's also this whole like, don't get into a relationship until you're whole, until you're healed, which is like a lifelong process. Mm-hmm. Right? So I have a feeling that relationships are perhaps one of the most effective and powerful personal growth tools. So I don't know, where do you take that?
Well, I want to acknowledge the first thing that you shared around you voicing that to me last night. Mm-hmm. Which I'm going to try and put into words how that feels to hear you reflect that back to me. Because it's a whole experience that I have when you really take a moment to appreciate me and my role in your life. Like when you shared that with me last night, I wasn't like surprised isn't the term, because it's not a surprise that you appreciate me so much, because you have been doing that for quite a while now. But it's a really special experience for me to hear that. Like, it just feels really impactful, I guess, and that's the surprise feeling, like, whoa, I'm being seen. Like, I'm really being seen by this person who, you're not just my husband, you're the father of my children, you're my best friend, you're my co-worker, co-creator, partner in business and community, and play so many roles in my life. And for you to see me in so many different facets and have that much appreciation for me is like the most radically special gift to receive. So thank you for taking the time to acknowledge my presence in your life. And what you just shared about relationships being like one of the most ultimate, if not the ultimate, growth tool. I mean, relationships are, to me, everything. There's a relationship. You said romantic relationships specifically, but when I think of relationships, I think of relationships with all people and beyond people, all the other energy in our lives. The way we relate with the earth and plants and animals and our own self as a relationship. So yeah, I love this topic. Good. Yeah. You can make a whole series out of this topic.
Maybe we can start relationship coaching and
What is that?
could make a workshop,
Yeah,
workbook.
maybe. Yeah, maybe we will. I actually had somewhat of a revelation this morning in the women's circle book group that I'm a part of, which I was just very briefly talking to you about before we started recording. And it was more like a building on a revelation, like an added layer on top of an unfolding revelation that you've been helping me kind of grasp, is the relationship between our sexuality and sex energy with creation and how we're able to show up in the world and give. The whole circle and book group is related to pelvic floor health and women specifically, even though that whole topic applies to men too.
Go check out the It's All One Thing episode with Philip Scheck for Radical Wellness. He speaks directly about the pelvic bowl and its importance in our centering, grounding, manifestation, etc.
Yeah, so the doctor who is leading the group, Rebecca Cohen, if you live in Louisville, check her practice out. She was speaking to the root, our root, which we hear about the root chakra. We're in spiritual circles, which if you're listening to this, probably heard of the root chakra, but how for women in particular, so much is stored in our root chakra. And if we're not processing and moving that energy on a regular, like a maintenance practice, like we would go to the gym or get a massage, like if we're not paying attention to that energy, then it becomes stagnant and it starts reflecting out into our external world, and how we're able to show up in our home lives, personal relationships, and then into our professional lives, and on and on and on. I mean, our ability to manifest money and opportunities and all that. So really just thinking of it in that way, like I've heard a bunch of times how sex energy is like the primal, it's the creative energy, and like logically, yeah, that makes sense. But there was this new level of embodiment this morning, thinking about how just thinking of it in that way as a woman, for me, how my energetic hygiene of paying attention to my root, which is nurtured as well through our relationship, in a variety of ways, it so directly impacts everything else. So
What was the revelation, or how did that, like, how is that? That sounds like information you already knew? How did it kind of open it to another? Did it open it to a deeper awareness, or what was or is this kind of like a further understanding? I thought you were going to tell me that we're going to have a lot more sex. So I'm not sure.
It's kind of hard to like beat.
I'm not sure I can handle more. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess yeah, it's just an added piece to how our relationship, like how I process romantic relationship, like physically, and how that really impacts everything else. Just like specifically in the last month, we've been through a whole lot of shifts, and it has felt like personal growth 10x acceleration.
Walk over my coals, baby.
And like, can it get any more intense in the last couple of months, really.
Which goes back to relationships, because it was relationships that have pushed us towards that growth experience. It's interesting as I think about what you're speaking of, this experience of sexual energy, root energy, and how it is connected to relating, not just sexual relationships, but relating to others. Because like this could be an entire series, but having experienced it, the building of that energy, and then the use of that energy in terms of this is going to get real esoteric real quick, but the use of that energy in helping others feel safe, in attracting into our lives experiences, into, as it wells up and our heart becomes more open and connecting with individuals. And I guess the thing that really comes up for me is how when misunderstood and misinterpreted, I think guys are way more subject to this, that it can become misinterpreted and understood as sexual attraction when it is just connection or like magnetism. It doesn't have to be turning it into a sexual focus is often kind of, I want to say, like counterproductive, maybe. Like it just has me thinking about in my life, over the course of my life. We've talked about this on our show and at other times, but how men tend to interpret just general kindness from women as attraction or flirting and whatnot. And as I have worked with that energy and like tried to build that energy rather than be depleted of it, I notice that I'm not trying to like take from a relationship to fill my cup. When I have lots of energy, particularly that root sexual energy that I've been, preserving and building. It's like I'm not looking to an outside source to fill my cup, which leads me into our recent explorations in Kabbalah as a personal growth practice. One of the things that we didn't in this chapter there was some talk about it, but I realized that I didn't have any direct conversations with like someone who's on the personal growth path as a teacher of a specific faith practice. We have this idea, and we treat religion or faith practices, spirituality, it is obviously in the camp of personal growth and self-development, but I don't know that we always consciously make that connection, right? Like spirituality is this thing over here that we do out of a desire to be fulfilled or have a connection to something bigger than ourselves. But the outcome of that, if intentional, is becoming a better person. And Kabbalah talks so much about us as vessels of light, and that it speaks very directly about, relationships or life experiences, hardships, trials that come up, very tangible, very practical life experiences, and how we can take those experiences and transmute them into opportunities for growth. And I appreciate how it speaks directly to, yes, the spiritual connection with the higher power, but also just like having more success in life, having better health, having better relationships. So that practice, that the philosophy or the teachings of Kabbalah, it seems like, watching you, that it's been one of the most impactful personal growth practices that you have been a part of. And I feel like you would probably say the same thing about me. And I'm curious for yourself, first of all, do you see any relationship between this root chakra energetic thing and the Kabbalah work? And then just if you could expound a little bit on your experience with studying Kabbalah, and how it's impacted your growth. Yeah.
Hi. So what comes up for me when you're bringing spirituality into the huge topic of personal development, I think of going through wellness coaching training. And one of the first things that I would confident to say most, if not all, wellness coaches learn is the wheel of life, which is recognizing that there's all these different areas of life that must be considered holistically when talking about wellness. And one of the first things that a wellness coach generally does is somehow assess where you're at in each area of life, and spirituality is certainly one of those very important things to address with anybody a wellness coach is working with, because it does have such a role to play. And because we all get to this point in life where there's this, okay, well, then what? Now what? Question. We can get to a certain level of success, whether it's financial success or fitness success or academic success or whatever, and we reach our goals, and then what? And without the bigger picture, for each person, it's different for each person, but without taking a look at the bigger picture, there is, generally speaking, a sense of unfulfillment and emptiness that really is inevitable. So the spirituality piece runs through these wellness conversations, because in addition, there's these big high impact experiences in life that are very confusing. like these big rites of passages, like death and loss of any kind, and relationships or jobs or whatever that just feels like earth shattering. And having some kind of intentional looking at what each of our personal beliefs are with this bigger picture, which is broadly labeled as spirituality, feels like a very important conversation to touch on. So yeah, the Kabbalah, that's been huge for me in the last few months. And in fact, it set off a series of, I feel like, all of these major transitions in our personal relationships that seem to come out of nowhere. I don't think it came out of nowhere. I think it was a building on type of experience in which Kabbalah then entered as a layer of the building. But it has had a major impact on the way that I'm navigating the most mundane things too. I mean, and it's hard to say that it's like the most impactful thing. I don't know if I'd say that, because again, it's like all the building on. Like
Right.
if I hadn't done this much meditation practice or listened to this much Alan Watts or like eaten mushrooms this many times or whatever, I don't know if I could even access Kabbalah.
Yeah.
But what's been really transformative for me is this concept of the vessel and us individually being vessels. And what really got me hooked into diving into Kabbalah was talking about what our current vessel is capable of handling or not, and how we can expand our vessel through like proactively or reactively. But there seems to be, or how Kabbalah talks about it, that I've interpreted anyway, is that really our only free will, if you will, is our response to situations. And if we can respond proactively, then we can better expand our vessel to let more light into it, to then share that light proactively. But if we don't choose the proactive option, then we get the reactive option, which is expanding our vessel through maybe like unwanted experiences that feel really negative. So,
which is like this, the crux of personal growth. Either you learn and grow through being proactive and taking charge of your own experience, or you grow as a result of the things that happen to you from not being proactive. And like, as I have explored this topic, central to this idea of growth, something that's come out of it that I didn't really expect, is a focus on the diminishment of chaos. I never really thought about that. I never thought about, because I lived in chaos. I grew up in a very chaotic environment. I've been comfortable with chaos. And as I have continued on this journey, I'm seeing that chaos is an outcome of reactivity, not proactivity. And so like all of this is it's all retraining, you know? It really requires us to be patient and kind with ourselves. Like it's, again, go back to relationships. I'm so tired of saying this, but let's call it PG. Your PG journey, your personal growth journey, PGJ, is it's all ultimately your relationship with yourself, and then that gets reflected outside into your relationship with others, or our relationships with others, or the environment, or however we are relating. Then is this kind of constant feedback loop, our inside and outside world, listening to. Go ahead, were you saying something?
Well, part of the building on pieces that led to, I think, Kabbalah being accessible for me, and it ties into the first part of this conversation and what you just said, relationships, and authentic relating, which is, I'm the authentic relating nerd in this town here, maybe the state, maybe the Midwest. I've been diving into authentic relating for years, and so much of authentic relating practices are about responding instead of reacting, and noticing our ability to choose. And so much of the practices are training our, I'll call it nervous systems for accessibility purposes, our nervous system, to even be able to notice that we have a pathway to choose, that there are different options. And that's so much of what Kabbalah talks about, is that if we can pause.
What a pleasure.
And even just getting to the pause part is like miraculous for most of us when it comes to most things in life. We, out of necessity, survival, there's a lot that most of us do every day. And a lot of it feels very routine, very mundane. We've got these engraved energetic patterns and routines. And so even just to get into more of a practice of noticing, this is what's happening for me right now. This is what's happening for me. This is what I feel right now. This is what I think right now. This is what I am imagining right now. Even just noticing and taking ownership of our own experience is like all of authentic relating, so much of it, and then so much of Kabbalah. It just begins there. That's where it begins, because without being able to do that, we really can't go much further if we can't take ownership and notice what is happening for us and know I have a choice right now and how I respond. Then we can like figure out what choices to make. And
so it's so incredible to me to reflect and realize that for the majority of my life, I just didn't know that I had a choice. I didn't even think that I had a choice. Like, somebody said something and I said something back. Somebody did something to me and I did something, said something. You know, it's just like this immediate. And that moment, even if it's just a moment of self-reflection, can limit so much chaos. You know, I feel like you saw it. You see it more. You are very helpful still at reminding me to pause, because it does come up. It continues, these reactive patterns that have just been a part of our being can really take some time to change. But, you know, and I think about like that whole scenario, you know, like my past self would have probably gone on for days trying to get somebody to understand, trying to make a point, trying to be heard by people who are just not, they don't want to hear you. And like the level of frustration and angst that those kinds of experiences have introduced into my being, or you don't even realize it till you're on the other side of it. You know, I was like very regularly, and I still get reactive. I'm struggling considerably with I'm getting reactive at the reactionary responses that I'm seeing out there, you know. What are you laughing at?
What's the Kabbalah saying? If Satan can't get you with the with a friend will get you by his tail. if you're like getting to a point where you're not being reactive and then someone else is being reactive, it's like this constant like opportunity to react or not.
Oh, the ego is always getting put in check. Always getting put in check, which is, part of this conversation of personal growth. That this ego that has a it should be this way, or it is.
Yeah.
It's a process. I'm sorry.
It's pretty crazy. It's like taking a meta view of it for me is pretty profound to notice that we're in this, we have seemingly opted in one way or another to this whole experience of getting caught up in whatever it is, and then getting little glimpses of perspective and clarity. Like, oh, I've been doing this. I've been really irritable to all these people, or I've been really standoffish, or whatever, like our own personal patterns are. We all of us have them in one way or another, and we're in this personal journey of being in them and then getting little glimpses and perspectives. Like, you ready to change it? You want to change it? Yes or no?
I think the main indicator for me when looking at it wrong is when I'm pointing my finger at the outside world. Someone else did something wrong. Someone did something that, to me, right, I feel this way because this happened, or this person said this, or whatever the case might be. And I guess, I want to say that the one of, however we don't be so definitive and say that the goal or the where we want to get to, but one of the places that we greatly benefit from is when we take radical responsibility for our entire experience. And that's really, really hard to do, because it does seem like the outside world is coming at us. So how do you when you feel yourself being whatever invaded by the outside world, or which nobody ever says anything mean to you because you're always the nicest person that plays the freaking plan, but on the rare occasion when it does happen,
I think it looks different for me.
How do you I mean, I'm assuming you're going to say positive pleasure, but there's got to be more to it than that. How do you turn that script around? How do you make it about you and not about what's coming at you?
This is, as usual, a very nuanced conversation where it doesn't always look the same for me, or probably anybody. There's this whole spectrum of activation for me. So what activates or triggers me is, I know, not always, but it's most of the time different than what might trigger you. So just depending on what I'm attaching my self-worth to, that's outside of me, which for me, when I feel misunderstood, that's a big one for me, when I'm really giving my all in something and someone either belittles my efforts or doesn't notice them, or acts like I'm not doing enough when I personally feel like I have given something so much. So that's like a really big activation triggering thing for me. And the way I respond to it in like that specific situation is generally collapse. So there's this whole like I'm blanking on what it's called, but this another spectrum of how we respond to situations, and there's a spectrum from collapse to posturing and then everything in between. So there's like humility and dignity are the healthy sides of posture and collapse, and then like equanimity is in between. But so when we're trying to like get out of triggered states, we're trying to get more into the balance of dignity and humility and equanimity with the person it's involving. But I go into collapse when I feel like somebody doesn't see me, doesn't see my efforts, doesn't care, says I'm not doing enough. And depending on who it is and like all the energy behind the situation, I mean, I can shut down for a while. I can just have the inclination to cut that person off, like just get rid of, like they don't see me, they don't care, I don't care about them. Mm-hmm. I'm done. Like, and have that reactive response. And to clarify, this has happened in my life and still does sometimes, where someone might say something small and they're not actually belittling me and they're not actually telling me I haven't done enough, but mm-hmm. I interpret in my head mm-hmm. or in a text message, like that's the worst. Mm-hmm. Like, I think most of us can probably agree that text messaging is so misinterpreted so much. But if somebody responds to me, like if I send this really thoughtful message, this is one I talked about. If I send a really thoughtful message and I like really care about how it's going to impact the other person and it's about something I've been working on, and they respond, okay, dot, period. Okay, period. Something inside me just like, I just want to be like, what? What the, did you just say to me? Okay, that's all? And I just make up this whole story in my head about how the other person on the other side is like, huh, okay. Like, doing this whole thing. So my point is that noticing, like, if I can catch myself, mm-hmm. noticing that I am making up a whole story in my head about what's going on and trying to, like, get centered a little bit before I respond, and then check it out. Mm-hmm. Just check it out. Like, okay, Courtney, you're making up a whole story. You think this person's really mad at you right now. They think you suck. They want to be done with you. And if I can just be like, hey, is everything okay? Or something, just checking. Like, most of the time, the person's confused. They're like,
stop texting me. I got 3 kids in my lap. I'm like trying to cook dinner. I got your message. Okay.
Not speaking from personal experience.
If you really want to get under Courtney's skin, just respond K. Letter K. Oh, gosh. She will have a fucking aneurysm. Just kidding. I'm getting better.
But that's so much of it. Like, so much of the tension in close, we'll just start there. The closest relationships, like partnerships, comes from interpretations, oftentimes based on something that did actually happen in the past, and maybe and it just keeps, that interpretation keeps happening over and over in the relationship, and it's not checked out to the point where it just becomes a solid story that we see as truth.
Which again is the relationship with ourself. It has nothing ultimately to do with the word that someone sent. It's our relationship with our past experience and how it still lives in us. It sounds like you're saying.
Well, that's the tricky part, is that it does have some, it sometimes does. There are sometimes very real things being communicated that it's not just necessarily us. Yes, we are having an interpretation. We are always we are a feedback system, like you mentioned earlier. So someone, like for me, if I respond, okay, period, I'm usually really irritated. So that is the projection that's going on. However, if you message me something and I say, okay, period, yeah, I'm irritated. So it's not like you can message me or call me and say, hey, are you all right? I'm interpreting that your message is meaning you're upset. And I could be like, yeah, actually I'm upset. And then that's the point where we talk about it. And we hopefully if we want to come to a resolution and learn about ourselves personally and each other and work through it. But it's when like we don't check it out that there's this inability to grow.
So let's talk about triggers. You brought the word up, and this is kind of what we're talking about here. When do we run towards our triggers, and when do we run away from them?
When do we run towards our triggers, and when do we run away from them? I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts on that are.
I think my initial thought is that when we are triggered and we are aware, if we can be aware that we do not have the capacity to respond in a mindful way, that we should leave the situation, get some space, and then come back to it. And then if we experience a trigger and we're able to be aware, okay, I'm triggered. This is an opportunity for me to learn more about myself, and then approach the conversation with a little more curiosity, then that is an incredible opportunity for growth. I mean, I think this is one of the reasons I ask this question, is because it feels like culturally we are, we got trigger warnings and, don't trigger me, but triggers, like, they only exist because we're unhealed in some way, right? Or at least that's how I perceive it. And so this kind of culture of trigger avoidance feels very counterproductive to me. Though there are times when we should remove ourselves from a situation. I mean, there's like, especially in the last couple months after doing this Kabbalah stuff, like I'll leave a text on read for days if I need to before I'll respond, because it's like I got to get myself at a place where I can respond in some kind of a thoughtful way.
I love this conversation so much, when like just relationships in general, and I love so much the nuance of it, because for you, like, I know you so well, so I know that is a huge, like, that's a milestone for you in growth, to walk away from a text message that is very, like, upsetting to you, or you have this big emotional reaction to it. For you to walk away is huge and positive, and your personal growth. It's like, for anybody that goes to yoga, like, the yoga teacher's always saying, like, this is not a competition with really anybody.
Watch my chaturanga.
It's like, don't be trying to down dog as hard as this person next to you.
Bitch can't down dog like me.
This is a personal journey. It's like you and God, or you and the Creator, or whatever, and it does involve other people too, but like it's just so different for everybody how we approach triggers and in any given situation, and what is like a really positive step for you is just would not be the same for me. So
thank you for saying that.
I love that
Yeah.
so much. And this just the whole conversation around being triggered is Kabbalah's also given me a new perspective on that as well. Not totally new, but refreshed in the way that Kabbalah talks about it, in that it's an opportunity to expand the vessel, whatever that looks like for you, and what that means for you is going to look different than it is for me. Like if we take the bird's eye view again and step back, and we're looking at like Eric over his timeline of life, and seeing you 10 years ago, like get a text message and stand up for yourself. Maybe at that time, 10 years ago, it was a pretty big milestone for you to be like, no, you're not going to talk to me like that. Like, instead of simmering for days on it, maybe 10 years ago, that was great and really helpful for you. And now here we are, and you've had all these learnings, and the new evolution is like pause and sit with it. And like for Eric, letting yourself feel it before taking action on it. And that bigger picture is like, it's like we're consistently being presented with these opportunities to expand our vessel. And so I'm starting to shift away from this whole like healed, unhealed thing. It's really, it may be helpful. I know it's helpful for some people to think that way. For me, it's not helpful anymore, if it ever was, but like reacting to something, I really like this way of thinking that when we can be in an uncomfortable place and be able to say thank you while feeling it. And that doesn't mean saying like give me suffering or like, you know, like whipping ourselves. It's not like that, but recognizing that it's happening. And the whole power of now, like this is happening right now. This thing that I'm experiencing, like acknowledging this hurts, this is really painful and really hard and confusing, and also thank you. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not feeling this because I'm unhealed or something's wrong with me. Like I'm feeling this because I'm alive. And I'm alive, and I'm breathing, and I'm getting to experience this thing, which is like not like acknowledging like it's hard and it sucks, and this is what I'm feeling, which is the opposite of spiritual bypassing, which it's a real fine line to get confused. Like, thank you, I'm not feeling anything, I'm fine, I'm good, it's all working out, law of attraction, like it's all good, and meanwhile repressing everything, like, and pretending like nothing's happening. That's not the like angle I'm going with. but just like there's a difference to me.
Yeah, for sure. And I really appreciate what you said around the nuance, because it's going to change over time depending on where you are in your journey, how you respond. to any circumstance, which, we've been talking a fair amount about this here in our household. The kind of lack of nuance in public discourse, everything's like this or that. And I feel like consciously engaging in my own growth journey, recognizing the nuanced parts of me that need different things at different times and speak differently at different times, has really allowed me to see that out in the world as well. Mm-hmm. It's like this whole concept of your self-talk is how you ultimately talk to others, usually a little more mild. You may be like really down talking yourself inside, or you're super critical internally, and so that comes out as moderately or highly critical outside. Mm-hmm. And so to be able to see ourselves as complicated beings with multifaceted perspectives that change depending on inputs and stimulus and perspective over time, it's like really cool how me becoming more knowledgeable of myself makes me a more compassionate person to the world. I suspect this is one of the struggles that we've been talking about, and it fits into this conversation quite well, because it's almost like one of the most expedited routes to personal growth is to be very public, to put yourself out into the public eye. Because first of all, there's going to be a bunch of people that are like, oh my gosh, you're so cool and it's so awesome. And then there's going to be people like, yeah, you're stupid, this sucks. And then, given a little bit of time, about 3/4 of those people that were saying, oh wow, you're so cool and you're so awesome, they're going to see you make a mistake, or they're going to hear you say something that they disagree with, and then all of a sudden you're going to be like the biggest dirtbag that there ever was. And so what that does to the ego is, I don't know much other than a really high dose of psychedelics that can really punch your ego in the gut, being perceived as something great, which you're not, and then those same people perceiving you as the cause of all their problem or whatever it is. So that's kind of my gauge on how good I'm doing, is not my own inner dialogue, or even necessarily how much I'm going to the gym, or how much I'm eating, or how differently I'm eating, or if I'm smoking more or less or whatever. My gauge is usually how I respond to criticism or expectations of others, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it brings up the topic of shadow work for me, and a new term that I've recently learned, the golden shadow, which is so the shadow is generally talked about, at least in my experience, as the projections, the things that the negative projections, the things that we are annoyed about other people. It's generally a projection of things that we are really annoyed with about ourselves and the relationship with ourselves and those things. The golden shadow is the whole experience of putting someone on a pedestal, really seeing the awesome qualities in someone else, but not being able to see them within ourselves. And there is a whole relationship between the shadow and the golden shadow, and how they operate together.
I just want to offset that because I've gone out of my way to tell people, do not put me on a pedestal. I am so flawed. I have very little idea what I'm doing. And yet this is still, like, you've seen it on repeat. And I mean, I guess it's like you are maybe like, is this something you've experienced? I'm trying to think. Like, now I imagine it becoming much more of a likelihood with Sanctuary, because you're more out front and, you know, people see you, perceive you a certain way, and then you miss the mark according to them or whatever.
Yeah. So
I guess we've recently seen this. Yeah.
Recently in our personal relationships, I had this whole big experience where there was, how do I say it, like a shadow being more cast on you and this golden shadow on me. And and I actually had, for maybe the first time, had an annoyance, or not even an annoyance, like a wondering and a feeling like, damn, I must not be asserting my needs and my own boundaries and speaking my truth enough. Because if I'm hearing from people like, oh, you're perfect, it's him that's the problem, then that's a big red flag to me. That, like, for me personally, that I am
You're too
not
nice.
What?
Too nice.
I'm too nice. I'm like, shit. I had this whole moment of like being that's the word, offended. I was offended. I was offended that these people were not acknowledged, not I felt unseen. I'm like, do you not know me? I've got this whole shadow side that apparently I haven't shown you. Damn. And that was a big, that was the first time I've had that experience of almost like a calling to put myself out there more. And having this awesome revelation that I haven't been doing that. And so maybe that means that I've been afraid to not own my stuff, but just maybe I haven't valued my perspectives enough to want to share them enough. So that's kind of my response to has that ever happened.
Well, it's interesting because, like, as you went through that, like, I was seeing myself on the other end of the spectrum, because I had been very quick to assert my in some ways, assert my boundaries or my beliefs, or like quick to just my fuck off. And that hasn't always been healthy either. Right? So it feels like this journey is kind of a constantly trying to find center. I don't know. It's like balance, you know, like we have this idea that balance is static, but it's not. To be in balance or to be in harmony means a shifting and you're, you know, kind of adjusting to what the situation calls for or where I'm at. And so, yeah, that whole experience was very eye-opening for me as well. Because I think that's probably a big reason why I have attracted so much of that. Not necessarily, you could call it criticism, but it's more than anything. It's a reaction. It's just a reaction to ultimately my reactive behavior, you know. and I do want to get better. I want to find that balance. I want to maintain a balance. And it's hard. These responses, the way that we respond and react, are deeply ingrained into our being. So to breaking patterns is so difficult. And go ahead. What were you say?
Well, I was going to bring in how we talk about in the minister trainings with sanctuary transference, and there's negative transference and positive transference, and it's like in the mushroom space, just unavoidable. And it's really the same as shadow, golden shadow. It's just different terms for the same thing, I think. But it does seem I want to say unavoidable, but maybe reframe, like it's a part of what we came here for, dare I say, or opted into, or are experiencing, is whether you're in the spotlight or it's in your workplace or it's on social media and it's being reflected back to you. Like it's just this mirror thing that we're in.
It's a hologram. We're living in this kind of holographic funhouse.
Yeah.
You know, it's like distorted reflections, and where's that coming from? Is that me or is that?
Yeah. What? Is that me? Is it you?
Yeah.
Was I thinking that, or are you thinking that? Am I getting well to some here, or am I crazy? I'm bad. Yeah. So, I think that covered personal development, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got it figured out. We're personally developed. Yeah. It's just I just really want to communicate out to folks again the nuance of you as an individual, of the world around you, and how important it is in our relationships that we like appreciate that nuance, that we don't, not just that we identify it and say it's there and I'm going to compartmentalize the individual into these different components, but we really appreciate the shifting dynamic that is a personality. And like, I don't know, I guess like one of the things that has been hardest for me in terms of relationships and personal growth is when it is seemingly communicated to me that like what I think doesn't matter, or when I feel really misinterpreted. And to just understand that is, it's a reflection of me in ways, yes, and it also illustrates the complexity of the other person, right? Like that if someone is reflecting some kind of distrust or misinterpretation of me, that to understand that ultimately their response or reaction is an indicator of their level of consciousness. My response or reaction is an indicator of my level of consciousness. And the only thing that I can do is take responsibility for my level of consciousness. And it's a moving target. It's not something that, again, it's like that balance. We're in a little bit of a push and pull at all times. And to just be patient with ourselves, be kind to ourselves. We're never going to get there Like there is no there to get to. I suspect
Yeah,
we're already there. We're already here.
sure is a pleasure.
It is.
Even if it doesn't feel like one at the time.
That's one of the things I've been able to touch into a little bit with this Kabbalah thing. Like having had so much pain. I have had so much pain in my life from relationships, from my own mental health stuff, from the outcomes of my own actions, like you name it, I have experienced. And being able to look back and see that all of that, every single time, has led to some level of growth. It does get easier to just like embrace the thing that's coming at you, not label it as bad, even better, label it as something good. And I have been able to actually feel that experience of expansion, of growth, by not running from the thing, by smiling into it, embracing it, and being curious about what it has to offer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm curious for you, what if we were, so going back to the topic of the wellness wheel, and to maybe round out this episode and envision moving forward, the wellness wheel for you, like if this personal development wheel, so on paper, looks like almost like a target in these categories like fitness, like physical health, romantic life, money, spirituality, family, social, community. You like go through and rate on 1 to 10 scale, like where you are, where you'd assess your health in each of those areas. If there was an area where you're thriving the most, and like an area you'd like to give some love, this year or in the coming time, what would that be?
Yeah, well, you already know my focus, I've been pretty transparent about this here, is improving my relationship with personal finance, which is a relationship with my personal sense of value, sense of self-worth, and like social life. I feel like, ironically enough, like we have a lot of community, but our community is our job. So I don't always feel like my social life is really banging, and I don't like I've had a social life that was built on kind of fluff, just go out and partying and not integrating, not like showing up for like real and meaningful stuff. So those two are the areas that need the most improvement. My family life is better than it's ever been, thank God. And I feel like I want to say, I'm pretty impressed with myself going to the gym like I have been. I never expected myself to have this. It's not even a level of discipline that's there, but it's like an enjoyment. I really am enjoying engaging with myself in that way. And so in some ways I feel I like my smoking. I haven't been smoking. I've smoked tobacco for quite a while. Cannabis, I've significantly decreased my smoking. And so I think my family life and my physical health feel like they are in better places than they've ever been, honestly. And that's feels really good. That feels like a foundation of self-value, So there's probably lots of money coming too. What about you?
The thing that comes up for me first, well, I'll start with what I feel like is nice and juicy right now is a family. Our family life is like, since getting the kids into a school that feels really good, and also setting more boundaries for myself around work. The last couple months have been really intense with program development and snow days and winter break and all that, but I feel really good about how I've still, amidst that intense time, still like had a sense of boundaries and being with my family. And so I feel really good about that. And as far as what I'd like to give some love and fluff is play. I don't know if this is technically on a wellness wheel.
It should be.
It might be. But play, which for me, I feel like directly ties into money. This playful spirit I'd like to cultivate.
What?
Your recent practice.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I haven't done that.
I think that's a gem.
Hold on. Oh, there we go. Oh, you're so right. I needed that.
Okay, so pretending to be high and getting high, tapping into being high with cannabis.
It is a good place to be.
Yeah. So that feeling of like the inner smile and tapping into that joy and love, happy play to all the other things. Working out, being with our kids, being with you, working on projects, doing the dishes, tending to our finances, like injecting that play splash.
It has me wanting to just tell everybody it's all going to be okay. Like, I know that it feels like everybody's coming for your everything. I know that we're being told that the world is ending on but like, it's really not, and it's just gonna keep going on. Yeah, there'll be some challenging things, but like, we can actually play and smile through a lot of it.
Yeah, I think so. There's some real good stuff with that. So, if you made it till the end,
You're the favorite.
you win some points. Wish I had a call to action for you, but all I gotta say is, what is your area of growth? Drop it in the comments. I am really curious. I want to know. I want to know from people
If
that are listening.
anybody's even listening here, I am very curious how people relate to their personal growth journey. Is it a task? Is it a pleasure? Is it somewhere in between? Is it something you can think about?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Maybe take like 30 seconds and write it in the comments. Probably be a nice little exercise for you. Just an invitation. So, thanks for listening.